everybody. I'm Leo Vaccaro. I'm just going to speak a few minutes about Rename Taney and our efforts to try to honor Caroline LeCount. And then we're going to have an invocation and hear a little bit more about the history. But as some background, we had this grassroots effort in the city of Philadelphia, and we asked residents in the city of Philadelphia if we were to rename Taney Street, unfortunately named after Roger B. Taney, the Supreme Court Justice. If we were to rename it, who would you like it to be named after? And we had an election. And so we went door to door. And I know a number of the people who knocked on those doors are here, and I'm really grateful that we were out there doing. If you could raise your hand if you were knocking on doors with us. No. Yes, okay. And also Fraser too, knocking on doors, yes. So I appreciate those efforts, and when we polled the residents said that they wanted the street to be named after Caroline LeCount. So it was a democratic process that we had, and we informed people as to what the history was, and I think it's an incredible name to have for a street, as she is Philadelphia's Rosa Parks, and somebody that was really worthy of being honored. The other thing that we learned during this process is that even though that there are thousands of statues in Philadelphia, there's actually only 4 statues to women that actually lived historical lives. And every other statue is of a man or some sort of allegorical figure. And so there's really an underrepresentation of historical women from Philadelphia around. And this was something that we wanted to do to be able to honor someone who played a big part in our history. Before we could even get to a street name or a statue, I think we were really shocked to realize that she's been buried here for 100 years without a tombstone. So we also launched a fundraising campaign, and I'm very grateful that 70 or so people chipped in and made sure that we could actually get this tombstone. So I wanted to start with that gratitude for everybody that was able to help actually provide this tombstone for us. So if we could have a round of applause for the donors of the tombstone. Okay, and the next thing I wanted to do is I was hoping that everybody, if we could pass, if Fraser, I could ask you to help me out, and maybe Ben, could you help me out as well too? Could we pass out these flowers? I'm going to ask everybody to get a flower, and then we're going to start our official program here. All right, so I have a couple of people to thank, and the first people that I need to thank are at Eden Cemetery. And so I was hoping that Mr. William Leiter could come up and say a few words from the board of Eden Cemetery. So please give a round of applause to Mr. Leiter.
Good morning, friends and guests. How's everyone? Beautiful weather we have today. And I want to, on behalf of Eden Cemetery, our president, Mr. Reverend Albert, his name just fell out of my head. And Craig Stutman, who was here. Also, Ms. Waters, who is here on the board. On behalf of our board of directors, we welcome you to Eden Cemetery in this celebration. I am one of the newer members to the board, and this time is always a lesson for me. Being here in Eden is a lesson for me. I live not too far down the street. And for years, I would walk through or bike through not knowing what was here in Eden Cemetery. And, you know, God has placed me here through some circumstances, and I was asked to be on the board. I chair the property committee. And again, you know, one of the things that I'm always learning is about our history here. And you know, we talk about grassroots movements and how these initiatives start up. You know, I really believe that women are behind most grassroots movements. And I tend to imagine it as a conversation, you know, that may start in the house, that may go like, you know, baby, don't be that way. what's wrong, right? And then the next day, the man comes out of the house on a mission to right whatever's wrong so that baby won't be that way when he gets back home. That's sometimes the way it happens in my home. But to know the relationship between Miss LeCount and Octavius V. Cato, I am just amazed at the love. We all know that they were betrothed to be wed, and that he was killed in a riot. He was assassinated in a riot to do what? To help people of color to get out and vote. And that they had such a love that after he was slain, she remained his fiancée forever. She never remarried. She never had children. And I am challenged by that kind of love for me towards my wife, right? But I'm inspired by that, and it's what fuels me in my work for Eden Cemetery. Not to mention all the other stories of men and women who had courage to dare for a place where Black people could be laid to rest forever. And so that is why I'm here. I hope that you connect with a lot of those stories. I am very inspired by our historian, Dr. Stutman, and the lessons that he speaks of, the stories that he speaks of. And it makes me think more deeply about, what's the genesis behind a lot of things that we do. Again, speaking to the movement of getting out the vote. We are facing an election season coming up. We'll soon be called to the polls. And I hope that these connections, getting behind a war effort, right, with the Union Women's Association, doing whatever it takes to support, those who are fighting, doing whatever it takes to get people out to vote, especially those who are underrepresented. Those battles are still being fought today. I hope that you will take place, or you will take a role in those battles and those calls to action, and not just applaud quietly from the sidelines, but do your role to encourage others to register to vote, to get out and vote, and to be mindful of wars that are being fought around our world. Thank you again for coming. I hope that it's an inspiring day and a connection, not just to Eden Cemetery, but to other stories of the men and women that are buried here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us at the cemetery. And I also wanted to thank the Borough of Collingdale. Can you raise your hands from the Borough of Collingdale as well? Thank you for having us here. We really appreciate the opportunity to have this ceremony. I did want to bring up one person from Rename Taney to say a few words about our efforts. And so if everybody could please welcome Tyrique Glasgow from the Rename Taney Coalition.
Ben, you ain't get up here and say nothing. You think you slick, huh? Well, thank you, Leo, for the introduction. Anyone don't know, my name is Tyrique Glasgow. I'm the executive director of Young Chances Foundation, which is a community-based organization in South Philadelphia. But I'm here on behalf of the Rename Taney Coalition, but just as a representation of a Black man. A lot of times we see the celebration, but we're here because of the worst decision in Supreme Court history that was levied against Dred Scott. And for me to understand the history, not only the decision, but the people at the table to try to take that off the menu is why I'm here. I'm in Grays Ferry, which is in South Philadelphia, probably one of the most divisive parts in the city of Philadelphia. So for me, for a Black man to see two white men walking in the community trying to change something triggered me. It triggered me in a positive way because we always point the finger at issues in our community, but nobody looks in the mirror. And for me, when I seen Ben and Josh and them walking around and they were not only sharing information, but being vulnerable to the facts that were out there, that the decision was basically that Blacks were not equal, we did not have rights, so we could not even be at the table. But every time I talked to them, it was an opportunity for me to bring something to my community, to not only talk about the issues, but some of the wins that could come out. they're probably not going to talk about it, but some of the ideas that I came up with, they was supporting, from a coloring book to doing resource walks to not just knocking on doors, but interacting with young kids who didn't understand what the decision was. But the reason why there is a lack of recreation centers, there's not resources for kids to have fresh fruits and vegetables in neighborhoods because of decisions like that. So we're here to honor LeCount, but I also want to acknowledge the people who are not pointing a finger at the issues out there, who are addressing them at the table. So I want to give a round of applause to the Rename Taney, but also to the donors, to all the people who make this possible, because we also know that if you're not at the table, you're always going to be on the menu for issues. So thank y'all.
So unfortunately, when Caroline LeCount passed away 100 years ago, she had no children, and that's, I think, a big part of the reason why there was no tombstone, and that left us a decision to make about what sort of inscription that we wanted on that tombstone. And I was really honored that we had the participation of a great Philadelphia author, the person that went around and cataloged great Black women from Philadelphia who made changes to our city and made our country a better place. And if you don't have this book in your library, you should run to Barnes & Noble after this, or run to a local bookstore after this and buy it. It's called They Carried Us. And I wanted to introduce Miss Fasaha Traylor to come up and say a few words about Caroline LeCount. So if you could please give her a round of applause.
I'm really glad to be here. I'm very glad to be here. I prepared some remarks. When I looked them up this morning, I realized that they were in January, so this process has taken a long time. But I think that I want to reshare them. I can't tell you how grateful I am to be able to share in the celebration of Caroline LeCount's life and work, and that Rename Taney has chosen to mark her contributions with a headstone and a street naming. My co-author, Cissy Baker Rogers, and I wrote They Carried Us, the social impact of Philadelphia's Black women leaders, because we were aghast at the seen invisibility of Black women in Philadelphia. This contradictory phrase, seen invisibility, applies to all the women in our book, but especially to Caroline LeCount. The seen part refers to the way that her sepia-toned skin marked her as a target on Philadelphia's horse-drawn streetcars after the Civil War. She was noticed. She could be identified as a Black woman and therefore prohibited from riding the streetcars like white Philadelphians. She was part of a broader national movement to desegregate public accommodations long before Rosa Parks sparked the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. The invisibility part refers to the way that her contributions to life in Philadelphia have been systematically overlooked. Her 50-year career as an educator and principal at the Ohio Street School found her guiding the education of the city's growing African American population. She mentored those who eventually became part of the city's cadre of Black educators during a time when mainly Black people viewed the education of Black students as a priority. Despite what growing numbers of misguided, misinformed, and reactionary politicians led by Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis think or believe, African American history is American history. It should be claimed by all Americans, those who value justice, equality, and democracy, and those who must learn to value them. These principles are bound together in centuries of African American insistence on fashioning a world that will hold all the people, all the faces, all the Adams and Eves and their countless generations, as poet Margaret Walker put it. Without them, America can never be great. They structure a vision of America to which people like Roger B. Taney never subscribed. They are the values that every school child should learn. My co-author and I believe that American heroes are all those who fight for and promote these values, and that our public celebrations should be reserved for them. Rename Taney has struck a blow against those who would cast them aside, and has honored one of the good guys in Caroline LeCount. That's someone everyone in the Philadelphia region can be proud of. Thank you.
Okay, before we put the flowers on the grave, I was going to invite up another Rename Taney organizer to give us an invocation. So Samaya Brown, if you could come up. I appreciate it, everyone. Welcome, Samaya.
Thank you. Please bow your heads. O Great Spirit, Heavenly Father, Creator, and the ancestors, we come to you today to bestow a long-delayed sign of gratitude in the form of this grave marker to a well-deserved human, Caroline LeCount. Caroline spent her life in service to others and is worthy of having her story told and name plastered on as many honorifics as we can muster. So, Caroline, we gather here to say thank you for your dedication, and we, with the blessings of all our makers above and with us, vow to continue your legacy and honor your name. Amen.
So if we could just start with the first row, perhaps, and feel free to come on up. Maybe Samaya, you can go first. And
okay, this is much better when Janice here with me. But this is our musical version of Penn's Prayer for Philadelphia, which is at City Hall. William Penn had a vision of a city brotherly love. Sometimes we haven't quite achieved that vision. And thou, Philadelphia, virgin settlement of this province, named before thou wert born, what love, what care, what service, and what travail have there been to bring thee forth to preserve thee from such as would abuse and defile thee. Oh, that thou mayest be kept from the evil that would overwhelm thee, and faithful to the God of thy mercies in the life of righteousness, thou mayest be preserved to the end. My soul, praise to God for thee, that thou mayest stand in the day of trial, that the children may be blessed by the Lord, and the people blessed by his power. And one you may know, if you just to join in, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I was blind, but now I see. And been here 10,000 years, and shining out the sun with no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Thank you so much for being a part of this, and thank you to all of our speakers. So please feel free to hang out. Thank you also to John from OcTrolleyFest. Thank you for singing. Really appreciate that. And feel free to hang out and pay your respects, or I know that the trolley needs to pull away eventually too. So thank you for coming.
Doggy car.